Okay, good evening. So today we would be studying about the 5 important things that have happened in the last week with respect to environment and ecology. So environment ecology is studied in 5 sections, right? One of the first section, where does Ramsar site come under? Ramsar site under international conventions. International conventions, and another thing is it is also important with respect to biodiversity, right? 5 sections, out of these 2 sections are overlapping. Ramsar convention, okay, Ramsar convention is with respect to which? Wetlands, है ना? So Ramsar, what is Ramsar? Ramsar is a city in Iran. Okay, that is where the convention with respect to wise use of wetlands was there. Okay, signed in 1971. 1971, and it talks about what? Wise use of wetlands. What does wise use mean? Wise use means that there must be intergenerational equity. Wise use does not mean that you should not use it. It also does not mean that you should overexploit it. What it means is that there must be wise use of wetlands so that there is sustainability, right? So with respect to India, we have expanded the Ramsar network by adding 2 more sites into this Ramsar sites, okay? So one is Patna Bird Sanctuary, Patna Bird Sanctuary in Uttar Pradesh. All of you are writing exam this year? You are writing exam this year. So Patna Bird Sanctuary, this is particularly important because they will first, with respect to wetlands, they will ask you about the location. Okay? Any kind of special biodiversity that is present there. Okay. You have another Ramsar site, that is Chari Dhand in Gujarat. These have been designated as Ramsar sites ahead of World Wetlands Day 2026. 2026, okay. 19 and 26. 19 out of from 1971 to 2026. How many years? From 1971 to 2026. How many years? CSAT. 35 years, 45 years, 55 years, 55, 55, 19 plus 26, 45, 55 years. Okay. So we have so many years. So 55 years, it brings to importance that this might be something that may be asked in the question paper. One is Ramsar site. Second, with respect to location, especially because it gets confusing with the name, right? Patna, you might think that it is in Bihar, but it is not in Bihar, it is in Uttar Pradesh. Okay? So now the number has grown to 98. What are the features? The features are important first with respect to the location. Where is it located? It is between Banni grasslands and Kutch salt flats. A very, very important feature of these areas is that there is a mysterious Cheer Bati light phenomenon. What does this mean? Cheer Bati. Cheer Bati is basically ghost light. Okay, ghost light. These kind of specific features becomes, somewhat interesting for UPSC to base their question on. So it is observed during the night time, you will find that there are flares of light that are there in this kind of place. Okay, and the reason, what is the reason for this kind of a ghost light? It is said by the scientists that it is because of these gases, that is phosphine and methane. Okay, phosphine. Yes, phosphine. Okay, so this becomes the reason for these ghost lights in the night time. What are the important species that are found here? Very important that it hosts 30,000 common cranes. One is common cranes, flamingos, greater as well as lesser flamingos, and this critically endangered sociable lapwing. These are important species of this Ramsar site, right? One more thing that you should identify here is that it is Gujarat's only conservation reserve. When we study about biodiversity, what is a conservation reserve? Do you remember? conservation reserve as well as community reserve. Are these protected areas? Protected areas कहाँ पे होते हैं? When we talk about protected areas, we are basically talking about under which act? Which act? Wildlife Protection Act 1972. 1972, it talks about various types of conservation, various types of protected areas. So protected areas, one I will have national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, conservation reserves, community reserves. Amongst that, I will also have tiger reserves. Okay? All of this are protected areas, and it is Gujarat's only conservation reserve. That means they can ask you a question. They will ask you a question whether it is the only conservation reserve or not, or they will link it to WPA 1972. Okay. Now individually seeing them both. Patna Bird Sanctuary, again it is in UP. A biodiversity hotspot. It is very, very small. It is only spanning over 1 kilometer square in Etah district. You don't have to remember the name of the district, but you have to remember the state. It is smallest yet most significant because of a number of species. These number you don't have to memorize, but you must know that there is significant amount of biodiversity that is present. Okay? And it is also designated as important bird and biodiversity area by the BirdLife International. What is BirdLife International? One of the previous year question would also ask you, BirdLife International NGO. Okay. That is particularly with respect to conservation of the migratory routes. Also the flyway, Central Asian Flyway. Okay, what is Central Asian Flyway? It is understanding that the biodiversity goes for a transboundary migration, right? Transboundary. This means that the flyway must be free from any kind of such infrastructure that can destroy the biodiversity migratory route, right? So in the west you will have Caspian Sea, okay, and east you will have China. So connecting both of these lines, you will find that a number of migratory birds utilize this route from Caspian Sea up until the China, right? So this is called the Central Asian Flyway. And the conservation efforts point towards the direction that this kind of a flyway must be free from any kind of infrastructure that can destroy the biodiversity or the birds' fly routes. Okay. So three things. One, where is it? Second, it is designated as IBBA, that is important bird and biodiversity area by whom? BirdLife International, and then Central Asian Flyway. Okay. So serves as a vital winter refuge. Okay. Now importance of Ramsar sites. What are the importance we have seen in the class? Importance of wetlands with respect to biodiversity conservation. Carbon sink, very good. I have it here. Climate regulation, right? Climate regulation is there. How does it act as a carbon storage? You will have partial decomposition. You will have carbon that is stored within the biomass, right? And also wetland is a zone of transition, right? Zone of transition means that it is a transition zone between the terrestrial ecosystems and the aquatic ecosystems, right? So you will have considerable amount of organisms of both types of ecosystem present over here, right? So climate regulation, important with respect to wetland. Second, water security. Water security. How do we understand water security? It is particularly with respect to filtration. Okay, because you have land that is waterlogged. Land is waterlogged, right? There is decrease of aerobic conditions. That is, there is decrease in the amount of oxygen present within this, right? So what happens is all the sediments that are there from the land will also get deposited at the bottom layers due to sedimentation. Okay? This aids the process of water filtration. Secondly, also it recharges the groundwater. Okay, soil is a porous medium. Therefore, during the percolation of water from the rain as well as waterlogged lands, it will also seep down to the groundwater table. Okay? Control floods. How does it control flood? By acting as a sponge. Okay? And maintain water quality for surrounding communities. Biodiversity conservation, as you have seen, migratory routes with respect to the birds. Migration stopover habitats for waterfowl and wildlife. Okay? Now this is with respect to India. Okay, is there any kind of punishment for violation of the conservation or wise use of wetlands? That if you are not going, if you are designating it as a Ramsar site and you are not going for wise use conservation of wetlands, then is there a penalty or for this kind of a violation? There is a penalty. No.
Penalty not, but
Huh.
what rules and regulations?
It is only based upon your reputation. Okay. It is based upon your international reputation, which means that if you are violating it, for example, when I'm saying violation, it means whether it is legally binding or not. That is, if you are not adhering to the provisions, then you would be liable for some kind of punishments, right? But there is no such kind of legal bindment, right? That is, the country is not bound to such kind of provisions. It is just that there is reputation attached to your own conservation measures, right? So India has become a signatory when February 1982, 1971, this came into being, this convention came into being, committing to wetland conservation as well as wise use. World Wetlands Day, it is commemorated. It is on 2nd Feb. Okay, 2nd Feb. Signing in Ramsar, Iran in 1971. Okay. The national progress, 98 Ramsar sites. Okay. So basically it strengthens our reputation. Okay. Basically it serves our reputation of being able to conserve a lot of Ramsar sites. Okay. One more question, if it is not legally binding, whether it is a transfer of sovereignty of the land under Ramsar sites. Sovereignty means that this land now belongs to the conventions. Sovereignty means how much right do you have over the land. Does it mean that these kind of sovereignty is being transferred? There is no sovereignty transfer in these kind of, whenever you designate under the Ramsar sites, there is no transfer of sovereignty. Okay. Now this is the topic from the section climate change. Okay, climate change. What is this? This is your carbon capture, utilization and storage. Okay, this is an important component because we talk about carbon sinks as well as carbon sources. Okay, the difference between the two will determine how much of carbon dioxide emission are there, or with respect to the greenhouse gases, how much of global warming potential are we seeing in the future, right? So Union Budget 2026-27 has allocated this much, rupees 20,000 crore for carbon capture, utilization and storage, these activities. Okay. Marking India's commitment to deep decarbonization, one word, and to in hard to abate industrial sectors to prevent. Okay. We talked about in the class, we talked about phase out or completely eliminate. Okay. Phase out and completely eliminate. What was the difference between the two? We were talking about just transition. We were talking about the transition with respect to the fuel efficiency, right? Similarly, in that, we were talking about abatement. Abatement means prevention. Okay, prevention means how can you reduce the amount of fossil fuels that are being used so that the pollution can get reduced or the global warming potential can reduce over a period of time. What does decarbonization mean? Decarbonization.
Instead of carbon.
Diverting? No. What diverting?
It means less use of
Hmm?
carbon.
Less use of carbon. Yes, you can say that. It means basically that there is huge amount of carbon dioxide that is being emitted into the air, atmosphere. Okay. Now can I switch to certain kinds of fuels that does not utilize or that does not convert the carbon that is bound into the solid particles going into the atmosphere? Okay. That means it is not a carbon dependent economy. Okay. Okay, how does it work? What do you understand by carbon sequestration? Carbon sequestration. What is carbon sequestration? Basically means storage. Okay, that is you are trapping carbon dioxide. The problem statement of whole climate change is that you have CO2 up in the atmosphere. How do you convert it and tie it to solid or liquid or any kind of biomass, biological? Okay, this is a problem statement that we have to solve with respect to climate change. Okay, carbon dioxide in the air and then converting it into this type of a proposition. So what are the different methods? What are the different methods? So there are key components of these many stages: capture, transport and store. First we are capturing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere itself, then we are transferring it and we are having some kind of mechanism to store that transported carbon dioxide. Okay. So key components when we talk about this kind of CCUS is post combustion and pre combustion carbon dioxide capture. This is stage number 1 component. Okay. Then we talk about pipeline or ship based transport systems. How will you transfer it, because it could not be stored in these formats within the system. Third is injection into saline aquifers or depleted oil fields, a very, very important method in which carbon sequestration occurs. Okay, this means that when you have used up the oil, okay, oil is getting extracted, oil field is getting depleted. Now what I will see that there is submergence of land because oil has already been extracted. So you fill it up with this carbon dioxide. Okay. So those empty fields that is underground can be utilized to be filled up with this kind of a carbon dioxide. Okay. Then once you have filled that up, because it is in gaseous form, it can escape. Okay. That means either you lock it in a chemical composition in liquid, or you utilize a solid particle. You use stones over it so that it cannot come out. So long-term monitoring and verification. That means there has to be appropriate signaling to anyone who is crossing that path that this kind of storage has been done and you should not cross it, or you should not remove it, because that will lead to it becoming a carbon source. Okay. So these are some of the components in which CCUS strategies wherein we are trying to develop. Post combustion and pre combustion. In the processes that are requiring combustion, carbon will go for CO2, it will go for CO, okay, or it will go for CH4. So with respect to economic activities, whether if you are going for burning of any kind of biomass, before that if there is carbon dioxide, after that if there is some carbon dioxide, we are talking about those carbon dioxide capture. Okay.
That pipeline or ship-based transport system means in that means what
It means that I am going for capture and then I find that where can it be stored? Can I store it there where I have captured it? No. So this means there must be transport.
after burning.
Yes. After burning, or if there is carbon dioxide, or even if there is industrial emissions, okay, then how do I transport that? Okay, because even if you capture it and store it there itself, then also it will be getting filled over a period of time. So it has to be transported to its storage. Okay, that is like in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. That is, you are removing it from that ground and you are taking it to some storage containers.
That you will use for that which it is stored also that you will use.
You can use it, you can trap it. Okay. Yes, storage with respect to depleted oil fields is possible. Secondly, with respect to water, with respect to chemical reactions, CaCO3, right, calcium carbonate, okay, you can use it with lime. So industrial processes that will require carbon dioxide will use it. One problem statement for you. Can we just capture all the carbon dioxide and throw it in the outer space? Hmm? Why not?
It again same process only. We are just
Hmm.
changing the procedure.
If we just fill up a spaceship with carbon dioxide and send it to Mars, what will happen?
What it contain. If there is less of carbon dioxide, means it is useful only, no?
Less of carbon dioxide. Carbon
Only mass.
dioxide, it is a what kind of a pollutant? When we talk about global warming, when we talk about global warming, it is something that will drive the heat budget of the earth also, right? Maintaining the temperature balance in the earth. Also, when it exceeds a certain amount, it becomes important with respect to higher temperatures, right? So my question to you is, capture all the carbon dioxide exceeding over the threshold and throw it away. Think about it. Okay? That if you throw it away in the outer space or if you send it towards Mars, Jupiter, not your global warming, Mars global warming. So why are you concerned about Martians? Mars people will see if there are people
But
there.
it is same only, no? Environment or the thing. If they affects the
Is there atmosphere? Is there atmosphere on other planets? So you check it, Hana. Find the solution to this problem. Okay. For this kind of, because when you spend energy, ultimately you are burning, you are going for carbon dioxide emission on earth itself. To send that much amount of carbon dioxide in the outer space, you are alternatively using carbon dioxide, you are burning carbon dioxide, right? So that is something that you are, what do you say, that you are utilizing more of carbon to send that small amount of carbon into the. Hmm. Yes, you can supply green hydrogen. Yes, 0.038% is also needed for the process of photosynthesis. Yes, but the ones that is exceeding the threshold, you can send it. Okay, but this is all geoengineering, that is man-made. Okay, we have no scientific evidence up until now that this can exist. Okay, just a thought experiment. For example, geoengineering solutions we also have in the case of increasing the amount of sulfate aerosols in the air. That means that it would be something that would reflect back the heat budget. Okay. Now, hard to abate sectors. Okay, what are the strategic priorities when we talk about this? One is hard to abate sectors. Hard to abate means hard to prevent. What are such hard to prevent sectors? In economics, you will learn about the core sectors. What are the core sectors? Electricity, fertilizers, right? Refineries, then crude oil, right? All of these. So these are some sectors which are essential, which are core sectors in the economy, and they will require the use of coal. That will require the use of fossil fuels. Okay. So my welfare of the economy depends upon these sectors. Okay, so these are some sectors in which I have to devote certain kind of research when it comes to CCUS. That is, if they are hard to abate, if I cannot stop working upon them with respect to the carbon dioxide emissions, then this is one of the methods in which I can remove the harm that is being done. Okay, which sectors are these? Steel, cement, fertilizers, refineries, thermal power, right? One more thing, emphasis on existing facilities rather than greenfield projects. What is the difference between greenfield and brownfield? Hmm. Already existing. Okay, this means existing facilities. That means we are talking about brownfield. Okay, greenfield is something that has come up newly. Okay, so that is your greenfield projects. Why do you think that it is something that is required with respect to brownfield? These are polluting ones, more polluting. Okay, more polluting. Also, why? Because they are less efficient, or I could say they are less fuel efficient, right? Over a period of time there would be degradation, there would be wear and tear of the systems, right? So this means there must be integration, and this must be with respect to the brownfield. Okay, reducing the transition cost and preserving assets. Preserving assets. What is transition? Transition, again we talk about fuel efficiency, right? If I'm talking about cleaner fuel, I have an example of what? Compressed natural gas. Compressed natural gas will burn cleanly as compared to other fossil fuels, as compared to coal. Okay, coal will leave out solid particles also, right? CNG is mostly what? Mostly methane. Okay. Now, indigenous R&D, indigenous research and development, building domestic technological capability through demonstration plants and shared infrastructure networks. So this means that it is also providing this much fund. The 20,000 crores is also going to be devolved in research and development. Okay. Indigenous, yes. Indigenous means that is based on the country itself. Okay. Now, context and challenges. What are global context and challenges? Here you can see the global capture. This is the global capture. Can you see? There is nothing. Okay, global capture. This much it is. Okay. The target is huge. This much is the target. Right? So this means we have 7,000 million tons, near about 7,000 million tons. Such a big target we have with respect to carbon capture, so that certain types of targets can be met. Right? Conference of Party will have certain types of targets, right? So this is the difference. So challenges, what are the challenges? When we talked about three stages. One was capture, the other was transport, then store. So challenges will emerge from this framework only. There will be problems related to capture. So high capture costs, right? Without carbon pricing. What do you understand by carbon pricing? It relates to carbon credits, right? What is carbon credit? That is how much amount of carbon dioxide equivalent is being emitted into the atmosphere. Okay, and what is the price related to these carbon dioxide emissions? So if you have high capture cost and you do not have a market, that means environment conservation is being done, but it is not being linked to economics of it. That is, people do not have a way in which they can sell or buy these carbon credits, then it would be difficult. Okay, it cannot be funded. Second, long-term storage liability and leakage risks, right? That means till when are you going to prevent such kind of carbon emission? Okay, you have undergone such kind of efforts both financially as well as with respect to environment. Okay, but for how long this kind of a storage can be there? Okay, and how much of storage will happen over a period of time? Okay, and also there is leakage risks. What will happen if these turn into carbon sources? Then there is also moral hazard of prolonged fossil fuel dependence. This means that this is just delaying, okay, delaying the stopping or hard to abate sectors. We are not going for prevention. We are just saying let us delay it for further time because we have such kind of strategies. Then public acceptance and regulatory frameworks is needed. Okay, regulatory frameworks on what are the positions with respect to capture, transport, storage. That kind of a regulation is also needed, right? This fact you can write: steel and cement contribute 15 to 18% of global CO2 emissions. These are particularly the hard to abate ones.
So how cement
How cement?
contributes?
Carbon dioxide. Basically, steel and cement, both of these will require high temperatures. High temperatures require coal. Okay. So mostly whenever you have establishment of these industries, you will need the fossil fuel coal. Okay, coal, both a gas pollutant as well as a particle pollutant.
Cement is made
Yes, cement will be combination of the carbon products only. 15 to 18%. ठीक है. Then we have Panchamrit goals. Panchamrit goals that said that there must be net zero by 2070. What is net zero? No carbon emission. That is zero carbon emission. What is net zero? It should be balanced, right? Supply is equals to whatever demand. Okay, this means that there is, you are breaking even with respect to carbon dioxide emissions, right? So net zero, how do we achieve this net zero by 2070? What are the strategies? So first is carbon markets. Okay, even in economic survey, have you read the economic survey part for climate change? Not yet. So carbon markets, what does it mean? It has been observed by the economic survey that the developed countries are not utilizing the carbon markets that are there in the global south or the developing countries. Why? Because the markets are not mature enough as compared to developed economies. This means carbon markets was necessary in the developing countries, right? But because of the economic downturn or because of the decreasing strength of currency, or with respect to the maturity of the markets, these markets are not completely utilized. They are more utilized in the developed countries. Okay, so where it was needed, it is not there. Okay, where it was not needed, people are putting in their money, right? So this means carbon markets must be made much more robust. That means there must be investors that must be pushed towards these carbon markets in the developing countries. Okay. So develop pricing signals and integrate with India's carbon credit trading scheme for financial viability. That is, you derive credibility, more credibility into this market mechanism. Then industrial clusters. Okay, just like you have extended producer responsibility. So you have industrial clusters, you can create CCUS hubs near sedimentary basins, enabling shared infrastructure and lower transport cost. Talked about three things: capture, transport and storage. This means that the nearer it is with respect to carbon dioxide emission and storage. So it is talking about, let us have these kind of hubs. Basically it is a, if you say this is waste, then this is collection. Okay, let us have collection near to the waste that is being generated. Okay. This kind of a hub can be your sedimentary basins. It can be sedimentary basins, right? Talked about what? Depleted oil fields. Okay. Reducing your transport cost. Otherwise, what you are doing, you're just transferring carbon dioxide emission that you have taken, and then you are utilizing the transport that is emitting more carbon dioxide and then storing it. Okay, no use. Global partnership. What is global partnership? It is leveraging international technology transfer and climate finance to de-risk early investments. Okay, very important to understand the link between environmental conservation and the link with respect to the investments in this sector, investments in clean technology, investments in technology transfer, right? People are willing to invest provided you do not have enough amount of risk. First, key, there is a problem of risk being involved. Okay, that means there hasn't been much of the research. There has not been much of research, therefore this kind of a risk exists for any kind of investors who would be willing to put their hard-earned money into a project which does not have a past. Okay, where the solutions were not be done for the previous goals, right? So one is risk and second is time. Okay, a lot of these projects will take a lot of time, more than 10-15 years for them to give some kind of positive results, right? So what are the ways, how can we leverage international technology transfer and climate finance so that we can de-risk, okay, that we can remove the risk from these investments. Okay, then balance strategy, ensure this complements renewable expansion and efficiency improvements, not substitutes them. This means that if we are going for CCUS, it does not mean that we are encouraging any kind of fossil fuels. We are doing it only because there are some sectors that are hard to abate. This is a pronged, you could say two-pronged strategy. In hard to abate sectors, I am going for CCUS. For the ones that I can abate, I am going for renewable energy sources. ठीक है. Now waste to energy. Last week I think we went for solid waste management rules. Solid waste management rules. Now it is waste to energy. What do you understand by waste to energy? First, it is under the section pollution and environmental degradation. ठीक है, this section. Waste to energy. What does waste to energy means? Basically that you are deriving energy from the waste, right? Solid, because rising solid waste burden into usable energy while addressing landfill crisis and environmental challenges. It is basically telling us that the waste will also have certain kinds of metals. Okay, you can extract them, or you can extract the metals, or you can also extract energy out of them. Okay, why? Because this waste is something that has what? Calorific value. Okay. Now I have three types of stages with respect to waste. What kind of stages I have? One, segregation. Okay, that is at the source. Then collection and then disposal. Okay, how you dispose it off depends upon whether your waste is segregated or not. With respect to waste to energy plants, it is a necessity that I derive out of waste the energy. It must be high in calorific value. High in calorific value. If it is not high in calorific value, then it is not going to be economically viable. ठीक है? To have the viability of the plant, because there is high capital cost in such kind of waste to energy plants. This means one, the quantity should be appropriate. Second, the segregated source should have high calorific value. Okay. So if I am talking about, suppose as an example, I mix dry waste and wet waste. What this will do? It will decrease the amount of calorific value, because the energy that you will supply would be gone in making this wet waste drier. Okay, that means that much amount of energy is not getting converted into further forms of energy. ठीक है? Example, waste to energy plants itself is an example of a strategy in which you are deriving energy out of waste. Okay, but there is considerable protests whenever there is waste to energy plants that are being established. Why? I think I have talked about in the class also, protests. Why people protest against these kind of plants? Because there is accumulation. Because first we talked about quantity. Okay, एक तो है कि क्वांटिटी ज़्यादा होनी चाहिए. If you have higher quantity, then energy is more that is being derived. Secondly, I should have high calorific value. That means I need the waste to be segregated, right? For the people who are living, residing near these waste to energy plants, they will be continuously in problem with respect to the huge quantity that is being collected from the whole town and being derived with respect to energy in their zones. Okay, so there is an active protest with respect to these kind of, where will you establish these waste to energy plants? ठीक है. And also the energy that is being derived, for example electricity, is it being supplied? Or with respect to the electricity tariffs, okay, electricity tariffs that is derived out of this energy, it will be very very costly, so there won't be a lot of consumers of electricity at this price, right? So it becomes a problem. That is why it becomes a problem. Okay, so first is WTE technologies and policy framework. First is incineration. What is incineration? That is burning the waste itself, okay, at high temperatures. This is for your steam electricity generation. Electricity generation through the steam that will move the turbine, है ना? Then gasification, that is converts waste into syngas with limited oxygen. What is syngas? ठीक है. Or that is, this is your carbon monoxide in complete combustion plus hydrogen. Anaerobic digestion. Anaerobic digestion means we are talking about no oxygen. To produce biogas, this is biogas is CH4 mostly, majority, methane. Okay, so basically we are talking about all of these. We are talking about again the fate of carbon, CO, CH4. Regulatory framework, SWM rules 2016. Recently in 2026 it has undergone a change. Okay, and ये भी देख लो 2016 and now it is 2026. This means 10 years have passed. Recently there has been a amendment also, amendment, or you could say change to these rules. So this kind of a question can come. ठीक है, SWM rules can come. So it mandates the source segregation, scientific processing, and RDF promotion. What is RDF? RDF is refuse derived fuel. Okay, it is what the word itself means. Okay, this is waste to energy. Okay, that is the waste, that is the refuse, that is you are not using it, and the fuel derived from it, that is your RDF. So basically these rules have said that there must be source segregation at the source level itself. Otherwise it becomes very very difficult for the informal sector, okay, because it is dominated by informal sector, the collection part, right? Scientific processing and RDF promotion in the usage of fuels. Who are the governance bodies? What is this? Ministry of Urban Affairs. ठीक है. CPCB. What is CPCB? What is the governance with respect to pollution? Air pollution, water pollution. इसका governance कैसे होता है? Which are the authorities that are responsible at the central level? It is CPCB, then SPCB, then pollution control committees. ठीक है, ऐसे चलता है. This is all through which act? Air Act, Water Act, है ना? Environmental Protection Act 1986. ठीक है. Earlier these two. Yes, it is a statutory body. ठीक है, statutory body derives powers from Air Act and Water Act. Okay, later it is given the power under EPA. So pollution control boards, ULBs is urban local bodies. They regulate. These are the ones that will regulate waste to energy plants. What is SWM? solid waste management. Solid waste management rules देखो, solid waste management, plastic waste management, e-waste, then construction and demolition waste, then hazardous waste. All of these are different types of waste rules because they are different in the kind of segregation as well as disposal strategies that we need to go for. All of these rules come under the umbrella act of EPA 1986, Environment Protection Act. There was a question with respect to e-waste and plastic waste management also, that was extended producer responsibility. ठीक है. So these are some of the facts that you can definitely write in your answers, mains answers. One is waste. Why should we have WTE? What are the challenges and opportunities? First, WTE can be economically viable only if there is a very, very high quantity of waste being generated. Okay. So with respect to the waste surge, we have seen that India generates 1.5 to 1.7 lakh tons of MSW. MSW is municipal solid waste. Municipal solid waste is being generated this much. And this is projected to double by 2030 because we are also going for rising urbanization. ठीक है, urbanization is on the rise. 1.5 to 1.7 lakh tons solid waste. ठीक है. So one is this. ठीक है, तो projected double. You will find, you might read in the newspapers that some of the countries are importing waste so that they can generate energy out of them. Then land scarcity. Land scarcity. This also proposes that we might want to move towards waste to energy because this will condense the waste into very, very small volume. So WTE reduces the waste volume by 80 to 90%. And this kind of reduction in volume is particularly important for landfills. Okay, landfills are a source of emission of methane. These are very flammable. Because of that, there would be fire incidents. Right? Then climate impact. Diverting waste from dump sites reduces methane emissions. Methane emissions 28x higher warming potential than CO2. Basically talking about warming potential. But global warming potential, when we talk about over 100 years, you could say, if we are talking about CO2 versus CH4, if the global warming potential of CO2 is 1, this is around 28, right? But with respect to lifetime, you have seen this in the class, right? It is 50 to 200. For this, it is 12 years, right? So from dump sites, it reduces methane emissions, which has higher potential than CO2. Okay? So next, multi-dimensional challenges. Okay, there are multi-dimensional challenges associated with what? WTE, waste to energy. One is environmental risk, because if I have gaseous emissions, we have seen dioxins and furans. These are particularly carcinogenic in nature. Okay, they are cancer-causing agents, and once they are released into the air, they are going to affect the human health, right? So poorly managed plants emit dioxins, furans, and heavy metals. 70 to 75% remains unsegregated in many cities, right? One is if you leave them like that, or you go for partial incineration. Economic constraints. One is the capital cost which is involved with establishment of WTE itself, right? Viability depends upon tipping fees and power tariffs. Again, the electricity that is being generated, who is the consumer who will buy it at that particular cost point, है ना? Social justice, again, one more angle when we talk about the collection. That is, informal waste pickers risk livelihood loss. Inclusive policy must integrate them into formal systems. That means that informal sector is the one that runs this chain chain of source segregation, then collection, and then disposal, right? If we are going for waste to energy, basically we are saying that these jobs are no longer available, right? So how would you plan to integrate them in formal systems, right? This is also something that needs to be answered. So if you see, this is high environmental risk, all of these environmental risk, you will have more with respect to the emissions, dioxins as well as emissions. Economic burden will be higher with respect to the high capital cost. Technical barriers, that is the segregation of waste is not being done, okay? Then social impact on the informal workers, right? All of these are points, the challenges that waste to energy plants need to answer. Okay, so one is circular energy approach, circular economy approach. Circular economy approach means that is you are returning to the original point, okay? Original point, because understand this through a simple cycle, that we are going for exploration, okay? That we are going for certain kind of minerals exploration, and because of that there is a huge amount of capital cost being used, because you need machines, you need to dig out, you need to have minerals, you need to extract it. All of this capital cost is there with respect to exploration. Then it gets converted through transport. You go and give it to a factory. Factory comes out with the product, product gets transported, right? And you utilize it as a consumer. At the end of the life cycle of the product, you refuse it as a waste. ठीक है? This is a linear cycle. Linear cycle. ठीक है? End of the life, it will end up in landfill. This ends up in landfill and it is now no more seen. Now this industry further goes for exploration, more mineral extraction, more such kind of waste being generated. What circular economy approach means is that utilize this waste, now go back into this waste so that you do not have to go for exploration and increase your capital costs again. Go for exploration in these wastes only. Try to gather whatever you require and then this would become something like this. This is a circular one. This means earlier it was linear, now it is circular. Circular would make it much more efficient with respect to economy, right? Economic efficiency would increase. Secondly, because the capital costs will go down. Secondly, environmental conservation will also rise, right? Environmental conservation, because we are talking about waste, deriving the necessary elements, energy out of the waste itself, right? So it says enforce source segregation. Source segregation important for waste to energy, right? Calorific value. Second, strengthen monitoring. Strengthen monitoring, real-time emission monitoring, public disclosure, and third-party audits to build trust and ensure compliance. This is particularly with respect to the waste to energy plants that are emitting, okay? So this kind of real-time monitoring will help the people who are protesting against such kind of waste to energy plants. Real-time monitoring must be done because there is always a fear that there would be more emissions inside within their regional areas. Integrate informal workers because we want to provide social justice. Okay. Promote circular economy. Prioritize the waste hierarchy, that is reduce, reuse, recycle, recover and dispose. Okay. What is the hierarchy, waste hierarchy? What does it mean? What are the different types of strategies that you can use with respect to different types of waste? Okay. If you start with source segregation, you will end up with different kinds of strategies. Something that cannot be abated, it has to be reduced. Okay, something that can be recycled or reused, okay, you can go for reuse or recycle. Recover for the metals or the exploration or the capital costs, right? Dispose of something that is much more biodegradable in nature, okay, that is not very cost expensive. Okay. Now this is with respect to biodiversity conservation and also sustainable development. Okay. So we have concerns over Great Nicobar Island project. Have you heard of this? Great Nicobar Island project? No. Great Nicobar Island project. This is for the understanding that Great Nicobar Island project is something that is very important geographically, also very important with respect to strategic significance in the Indian Ocean. Its strategic significance. Okay, it connects to a various number of ports. Okay, very important with respect to the security of the nation as well. So there is a mega infrastructure project that has been sanctioned 92,000 crores. This was done in 2021. Mega infrastructure project. Okay, now this is a problem. Again, the problem comes with respect to governance part. Okay, what do I have on Great Nicobar? I have PVTGs. What are PVTGs? PVTGs, particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Okay, that is in your previous year question also, right? How many PVTGs are there? They will ask you. With respect to the PVTGs that are present and they are coming at crossroads with this infrastructure development. Okay, this issue is mainly about the overlap of Forest Rights Act, and then also the infrastructural projects that are necessary from national security point of view, right? It threatens the ancestral tribal lands and pristine ecosystems on India's southernmost island. Okay. So what is this project? It encompasses three different things apart from every other thing. Okay, this is launched in 2021 by Niti Aayog. First, it includes a transshipment terminal. Okay, you need to remember these areas: Galathea Bay, Greenfield Airport, Township and Tourism Project. Okay, transshipment terminal. What does this mean? It is basically serving as a port. Okay, port, so that wherever you have cargo, okay, it can be exchanged and this can be established as a terminal. Okay, basically covering the logistics. Okay, so in one cargo you have certain types of products. Okay, it needs to be transferred and then it needs to be sent to another place. Okay, so this is transshipment. Okay, so they are going to construct this kind of an internal container transshipment terminal at the Galathea Bay. Greenfield Airport, okay, that is to enhance tourism, also to enhance the security needs of Indian Armed Forces, right? Township and Tourism Project, very important. It is located near Malacca Strait. Yes, and Malacca Strait is important. Why? In the context of international relation, Malacca Strait is a choke point. Choke point meaning that it is having more density of ships that is going through this strait. Okay, strait is something that is between two lands. Okay, two land masses. Crucial maritime route linking Indian Ocean to Pacific. Okay. The project aligns with India's Act East policy and Indo-Pacific strategy. Okay. So strategically also, public interest also, developing infrastructure also, all of this coming at the crossroads with respect to the social welfare and also at their with respect to the economic viability of the project. Okay. When we talk about again sustainable development, we are talking about three things: economics, then we are talking about environment, then we are talking about society. Okay, all of these when balanced together will yield sustainable development. Sustainable development is something that is not avoiding the intergenerational equity. Okay, so we have seen this transshipment that is international container transshipment terminal, second greenfield airport, and then increasing township and tourism. Now there is a tribal land dispute. Okay, tribal land dispute. The Nicobar tribal councils, they have made allegations. They have said that the rights under Forest Rights Act, you have a Forest Rights Act that is originally called Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Act, and this was in 2006. It establishes individual as well as community rights. Community rights. ठीक है? For the rights to be established, you must present the evidence of your ancestors living at least 75 years on that land. Okay. So these rights are established with respect to cultivation, hunting, okay, grazing. All of these rights are established that you have been living there for a very, very long time, and therefore your rights must be respected. Okay. So Nicobar Tribal Council has said that there is a pressure from the district administration of giving up these rights, and these rights have not been established. Okay, if these rights are not established, this means that they cannot practice these rights also, right? So ancestral tribal lands were Galathea Bay, Pemaya Bay and Nanjapa Bay. Okay, the dispute is administration claims forest rights were settled under Forest Rights Act.
Galathea means they are all
Bays, basically part in the island groups. Okay, the key issue is that administration has said that we have settled all of these rights. We have identified, provided with evidence, and we have also served, established these rights and provided them. But the tribal council has said that FRA processes were never initiated. Okay, basically a problem in forest governance. Okay, so your job with respect to this particular issue is to find out what are the indigenous communities here. Okay, how many tribes are there in Andaman and as well as Nicobar Islands first. Second, you must also understand what are PVTGs and how many of these Andaman and Nicobar Island tribes are classified as PVTGs. Okay, so this can come as a question. In this particular case, it is Shompen tribes that are particularly alligating Nicobaris and as well as Shompen. Tribes.
in Nicobar Island.
Nicobar, Great Nicobar, southern part of Nicobar Islands. ठीक है? Now, ecological and strategic significance. What are the national parks that are situated in this place? Okay, Campbell Biodiversity Hotspot, Campbell Bay and Galathea National Parks plus Great Nicobar Biosphere Reserve. It has a number of endemic species and tropical rainforests, right? Maritime gateway, we talked about Malacca Strait, Sunda Lands, right? Lombok. And economic vision, it is part of your Maritime Indian Vision 2030 and Amrit Kal Vision 2047. That is why we are going for 3 types of construction. One is container port, the second is greenfield airport, and then tourism activities, right?
So Lombok Strait.
Lombok Strait, yes. You will have to look at the map. Okay, Lombok Strait. Malacca Strait is the most important one here. Okay, if you remember that, that would be fine. So the question is about equitable, sustainable path. है ना? Equitable, sustainable path. Again, the crossroads is tribal rights, economic development, and environmental protection. 3 things whenever we talk about sustainable development. ठीक? Now the last part, amphibians have reached 9,000 described species. Okay, up until now in biodiversity and its conservation, we have said that 8.7 million species are the ones that are estimated to be living on the earth. Out of these, 6.5 million and 2.2 million. Okay, this is on land, this is on water. Okay. A new study has said that there are amphibians that have reached 9,000 described species. Okay, that is nearing the estimated ones. Okay, what are amphibians? Land and water. So we have seen that with respect to if you have to describe with respect to vertebrates and invertebrates, what are amphibians? Are they vertebrates or invertebrates? Vertebrates. Some.
Means
When we talk about the division, vertebrates, I told you, what is this? Remember? B farm. You were there in the class. Birds, fish, amphibian, reptiles, and mammals. Okay, this is a mnemonic that you can remember that these are vertebrates. Okay. So you have amphibians. Okay, let us understand each of these words. Ectothermic vertebrates. Ectothermic vertebrates. What does this mean? Yes, this means that they derive heat necessary for their physiological functions, but from external sources. Okay, outside their bodies. Okay, you will have frogs, salamanders, and caecilians with biphasic life cycles. What do you mean by biphasic? It means that it can have a life that is based on land as well as water, biphasic. ठीक है? Linking aquatic and terrestrial life. Their permeable skin makes them exceptionally sensitive to pollution, climate variability, pathogens, and habitat alterations. So we have seen in the process of homeostasis, right? They will maintain certain kind of equilibrium with respect to their internal functions as and when you deliver external shocks to their internal systems, right? So they are very, very sensitive. They breathe through what? Skin, right? So this means they are sensitive with respect to pollution also, because that is one of their primary functions, metabolic functions. These characteristics position amphibians as early warning taxa in conservation biology, serving as bioindicators. We have seen bioindicator species, right, or ecological indicators. This means that if there is certain kind of changes, okay, if there is changes which is not helping the habitat ecological niche of these animals, then these would be the first ones to be eliminated, removed from that. Okay. So taxonomic milestone, 9,000 described species are there. Okay. Every year we are going for 180 discoveries of such amphibians. 6,000 undescribed species. That means that this is remaining to be discovered. Expected species by 2100, 16,000, right? 16,000 projected total estimate. Okay, this means this is present knowledge, and that is the knowledge that we estimate. We estimate in the coming years. ठीक है? You don't need to remember these data, but just for comparison, understanding. So order-wise biodiversity patterns, like even within amphibians, you will have different ones. Okay. Now, anurans are the ones that are without any tail. Okay. Salamanders within amphibians. These are different types of biodiversity when I further classify amphibians. Okay. And when I see which kind of amphibian is much more prevalent in the environment, it is anurans. Okay. That is one without tails. The examples would be frogs and toads. It is said that they are historically most speciose group. What does it mean, speciose group? Most of the species with respect to amphibians would be present in this group. Most species, right? With adaptive radiation across microhabitats. Have you read about adaptive radiation in the first chapter, ecology, ecosystem? Adaptive radiation, natural selection, evolution? No. Adaptive radiation basically means that there would be certain types of modification in the evolution process due to the different ecological niche that is present. Okay? Heard about speciation, parapatric speciation, sympatric speciation, allopatric speciation? This was one of the PYQs also, sympatric speciation. Okay, so basically it means that if the population of same species is undergoing any kind of geographical barrier between them, then these population will evolve and convert themselves into certain types of species that cannot interbreed further. ठीक है? You will speciation. ठीक है? Salamanders are 9%. 88% is frogs and toads only. Okay? Salamanders are 9% and caecilians are 3%. Only thing you need to remember, these are lizard-like. Lizard-like, that means they have tails. Okay? These are worm-like. ठीक है? 88% is frogs and toads itself. Okay, most of the concepts you will know. The thing is that you must be aware of the names also, right? Because they will confuse you with the names. Once they gave ecosystem as the definition, like you had to identify which definition is correct for the ecosystem part. Okay, and the options were so similar that you will get confused. Okay, so biogeographic distribution, where is it found most? One, South America. Only the top 3 is something that you should know. South America, Asia and North America, and then Africa and Oceania. These. Okay? Because these will tell you how are they distributed with respect to climate as well. Okay, because they are very, very sensitive to huge amount of climatic changes. So what is their climatic distribution with respect to the continents? Okay? Now, conservation urgency. Okay, amphibians are the most threatened vertebrate group. Remember, in the class we have done this land plus water, then we talk about air and land mammals, right? So we have done conservation urgency. This is because they are sensitive, very, very sensitive. They are warm-blooded or cold-blooded? Cold-blooded, right? So this means most threatened because of the external shocks that can be delivered to both kinds of ecosystems, right? So most threatened, facing extinction from habitat loss, climate change, invasive species, pollution, and this is a very, very complicated word. We'll see it in the next class. But despite disproportionate threat levels, amphibians receive less than 2.8% of global conservation funding. This means how much does conservation measures receive? 2.8%. 2.8% of global funding. Okay? Then we have 9,000 species milestone is there. Highlights both scientific progress and conservation urgency. That is, you need to have more urgency with respect to conservation. What is the way forward? What is the way forward? One is strengthen taxonomy and molecular research capacity, prioritize biodiversity hotspots in protected area planning, disease. Okay. These way forwards are based upon first, reduce the amount of habitat degradation and loss of habitats, or habitat degradation and habitat loss. Okay, both of these things should be reduced. Secondly, we should also understand what is the habitat niche of various kinds of different types of amphibians that are present. So strengthen taxonomy, molecular research capacity, what kind of differences are there, variation with respect to both all of these species. Prioritize biodiversity hotspots in protected area planning. Even with respect to the protected areas we should be prioritizing the biodiversity hotspot. What are biodiversity hotspots? Ones which are much more threatened, and they are also with respect to endemic species. Okay, you will find more number of endemic species over there. So they need much more priority as well as funding as compared to the whole of protected areas, right? Scale disease surveillance and habitat restoration. Disease surveillance, because they are very, very sensitive even to the pathogen infection, right? Increase funding aligned with threat levels via GBF targets. What are GBF targets? Global Biodiversity Framework. You have, first you had what? Aichi biodiversity targets, and then Kunming, Montreal. Okay, this is 30 by 30, 30 into 30. Remember, that means 30% of land as well as ocean must be conserved by 2030. ठीक है? ठीक है, तो that is all. I think we have completed. Okay, thank you.